Oh, hey! In this video, I'm going to show you how this awesome window seat bench was made. Notice I didn't say how I made this window seat bench, because believe it or not, I didn't make it. Craig did. This was Craig's third woodworking project, and as you can see, his skills are starting to grow. Now, when we do these videos, I'll do the voiceover after Craig has built the project without any help from me. Which means that sometimes the voiceovers can come across that I'm being a little mean or hard on Craig. And I promise I am not, all right? I love Craig, and you can tell he did a fantastic job. I just point out certain areas of the build that perhaps he could have done things in a different way. I mean, he got there in the end. The end result speaks for itself, but there are probably some things that, you watching at home might want to change if you take on this project for yourself. So without any further ado, let's watch the video and see how he built it. Like any good project, Craig started with a sketch of what he wanted. Now this is the space. It's the far end of their upstairs bonus room, and I think shelves and a bench is going to look fantastic here. So after getting some quick measurements, he headed over to my shop and he started ripping down pieces of plywood. Now it looks like he's going to be building this entire thing out of 3/4 inch birch ply. So he gets some pieces cut over on the table saw, and then he cuts them down to the correct length over on the chop saw. A little zip, little zap, little zoop, and Craig is ready for, well, assembly. I couldn't think of anything that rhymed with zoop. Looks like he's got all of his pieces there, and he's going to start gluing and brad nailing them together. I'm not sure exactly what piece he's working on here. If it's the bottom piece, I don't know why he glued those little supports on the outside. I would have put them underneath. Yep. Okay, that was a mistake. There you go. You see, they actually add support when they're on the bottom. If you just nail them to the side, well, then you're hoping those nails are strong enough to hold everything up, which you don't want to do. But Craig figured out his mistake, and it looks like he's adding some more supports in the middle. Now, it's a really long wall that he's building this bench along, so I'm guessing he's going to have to do it in 2 separate parts. So now that he's got his base plate done with some supports in there to make it nice and sturdy, looks like he's slapping on some outer supports on the outside there, a little glue and screws. And then he's going to do some internal dividers. Now, the nice thing about a built-in against a wall is that you really don't have to have it hooked together all that great, because once you get it in place and it's attached to the wall, it is going to be plenty strong enough. So he's got his internal dividers, and now he's adding some nailer strips and other support pieces to make a sort of box that will be his lower bench section. And all in all, that looks like a great box. He's got one right there, and if I was correct, yes, he's got 2. So these 2 pieces will come together to make the full length of the bench. So far, so good. Now, as you know, Craig is my employee, but what you might not have realized is he's also my next door neighbor. So after building everything in my shop, he carries it over to his house. Unfortunately, Craig has a very tight staircase to get everything up to his upstairs bonus room. I'm not exactly sure how he's going to manage to get all these pieces up there, because he can't build everything in smaller pieces and hook it together. Once he got the 2 bench lower parts carried upstairs, now he's trying to fit them in between the wall. Now, I see he made a common mistake here, which is to make the pieces exactly the right length to fit in between the wall, which you just don't need to do. If it was me, I would have left each piece about a 1/2 inch short so that you got plenty of wiggle room to get it in there, and then you can always cover that up with your face frame later. But he managed to get those bench pieces in, and now it looks like he's got some riffs on white oak that he's going to be using for the actual bench top. So we marked out a few pieces that he wanted to cut off to get them to the correct length, and now he's going to rip them down to the right width on the table saw. Unfortunately for him, we kind of have a small shop, and that is a long bench top. So it looks like he had to open the barn doors to get enough runway to get those pieces through the table saw, but he managed to get them all ripped down to the appropriate width, and now it is time to glue them together. Looks like 3 boards, going to be plenty for the glue up. The domino joiner. Now, you don't technically need the domino joiner to do a glue up like this. It would be plenty strong with just the glue, but the domino joiner definitely helps with your alignment to make sure all your seams line up. And for a big piece like this, dominoes are definitely the way to go. So good on you, Craig, for thinking ahead. Looks like he managed to get all 3 pieces hooked together with some glue and in clamps, and so far that's looking pretty nice. I correct myself, I don't think that is rift sawn white oak. I think that's just standard sawn white oak. So with his top all in clamps, it looks like now he has some poplar. I'm guessing he is ripping down parts and pieces to make his face frame. Again, had to open up that barn door so that he had enough room to run the pieces through the table saw. And then this is very smart. This is exactly what I would have done. I would have taken my pieces over and I would have fit them in place to make sure that my face frame was exactly the right size. So he's got his rails on the top and bottom. He's got his stiles on the side. He's got his divider pieces to cover up all those plywood dividers. Looks like once he got all the pieces fit exactly the way that he wanted them, he took them back over to the shop, and he's using a Craig jig to drill out some pocket holes and hook everything together. You don't really need that square there. I mean, if your pieces are cut square and you're getting them all lined up, they're going to hook together square. But hey, being careful, there's nothing wrong with that. And it looks like he's got a nice looking face frame. Oh my gosh. Remember how I mentioned his staircase is pretty tight? I was wondering how he was going to get the larger pieces up into that room. But he does have a window. So a ladder and a window, and man, that looks like a nice tight fit. Well done, Craig. That looks great. So far, so good. All right, so now that he knows the face frame fits, he's not ready to hook it on yet. So he took it back out the window, back over to the shop to sand everything down, and now it looks like he's measuring to make the drawer faces. Again, he's making all of these out of poplar. I'm assuming he's going to do a shaker style drawer front, so he's cutting all of his pieces for his rails and stiles. That's interesting. I never saw him cut any mortise and tenons to hook those pieces together. Looks like he had a little problem with measurements here. Those are just a bit too small for the space. So recutting some pieces to get them to the right size. Now Craig took a long time cutting all these pieces, laying them out, making sure they were perfect, and then I came out to check on his work. He was very excited to show me that he cut all of his pieces, and that's when I unfortunately had to tell him he made a pretty big mistake. You see, he didn't cut his tenons yet for the shaker style pieces, which means that those tenons are going to have to go into those stiles, at least 3/4 of an inch on each side, which means he cut all of his rails 1.5 inches too short. So, sorry, buddy, but you're going to have to recut all those pieces. I told him just to walk away, come back the next day, and he'll get it figured out. So he came back the next morning. He recut all of his rail pieces so they were 1.5 inches longer. That way he can do a nice 3/4 inch tenon. And then he took all of his pieces and he started adding a nice 1/4 inch groove down the center of each one. Now, Craig has seen me make drawer faces like this a lot, so he knows the best way to get that groove is to run a pass through the table saw and flip the piece around 180 degrees. That way you ensure that that groove is dead center in the middle of all your rails and stiles. Now he's going to be doing panels out of 1/2-inch MDF, and he needs to add a little rabbet around the backside. Now there's a lot of ways you could do this. You could use a dado stack, you could use the router table. Looks like he's going to do the old 2-cut method where you cut it one way on the table saw and then fold it down and you cut it again. That removes all of those pieces. Whoops! Some of them are sliding inside the table saw. Anyways, that'll give you a nice rabbet that you can float those 1/2-inch panels into your frame. It'll be flush on the back side. It'll look like a recessed panel on the front side. I mean, whatever works, works. Once he gets those panels cut, it looks like now he's cutting those tenons with the crosscut sled, and it is time to glue all the pieces together. Now recently I've switched to a method where I glue up all of my drawers and door faces oversize and cut them to the right size after the fact, but Craig opted to just make them exactly the right size on glue up, which is totally fine. You just got to be really careful gluing them up that you get everything nice and square, which it looks like he is checking to make sure they are. And then because that is a floating panel on the back, he just makes sure that the reveal around the outside is pretty even, and then he tacked the panel in place with a 23 gauge brad nailer so it doesn't flop around. Then it looks like he's taken his face frame back over to his house through the window, getting pretty good at climbing in and out. And I'm guessing what he's doing here is he's marking out because he's going to hook the face frame in place with lamellos. So I think that's what those marks were. He's also taking the opportunity to install his drawer slides while the face frame's up there, and it looks like at some point he made drawer boxes, which is great. He made them the exact same way I make all my drawer boxes, so if you want to see that process, just go back to one of my other cabinet making videos. And then it looks like he got all of his drawer boxes installed, which is fantastic. So with his face frame all marked out for lamellos, I believe. Oh, pocket holes. So now I'm a little confused. Okay, lamellos on the bottom, pocket holes on the top. Interesting choice. I'm not exactly sure why he didn't just do lamellos on the top and bottom. You know, Craig, he likes to mix things up sometimes, which, you know, is fine. Mixed media, that's a form of art. So, yeah, he mortised out for lamellos on the bottom, pocket holes on the top, and then once he gets his face frame clipped in, it is time to figure out all of his drawer faces. So he used the old playing card trick. Okay, this was just a test fit. He wasn't actually hooking those on. Just double checking to make sure everything fits right. Okay. And then back over to the shop to sand down those drawer faces. Very nice. And then, ooh, you gotta hand it to a guy who paints his own cabinets. Craig is using the Greco Quick Shot, which is a new addition to our shop, and he's actually the first person to use it. He first sprayed everything down with what looks like a very tinted primer, which is good. I always like to tint my primer. And then he's going for a really dark color, which I like. Now, at this point, after having everything painted, he asked for my help just to get the face frame in place. So I came over via the window, which is a lot harder than he makes it look. And then we very carefully slid that face frame into place, and he locked it in with those lamellos. Once I was done helping him, he helped me back out the window. And then he added those pocket screws on the top. Again, not quite sure why he didn't just use lamellos everywhere, but that's fine. And then it looks like he's finally installing his drawer faces permanently, getting some nice brass hardware on there. So far, this thing is looking great.
This video is sponsored by our good friends over at Policy Genius. Now, I know everyone's like, time flies, but when you really think about it, 2025 is just getting started. And if you're still checking things off your to-do list, one of those things you might want to add that little check next to is finding a good life insurance policy. Yes, that could seem daunting, all the paperwork, all the searching, trying to find the best policy. Well, it's not that hard. All you got to do is go to Policy Genius because they've done all the work for you. If you don't believe me, just check this out.
With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. Your work life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. Policy Genius gives you unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team. They have no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. That's probably why they have thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot, because they really are the smarter way to buy life insurance.
If you're still like, where do I go? What do I do? How do I sign up? Well, that part couldn't be simpler. You just do this.
Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/bourbonmoth or click the link in the description to get multiple life insurance quotes for free and see how much you can save.
A huge thanks to Policy Genius for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to watching Craig. He might need life insurance.
With his entire lower cabinet done, painted, installed, Craig returned his focus on that white oak top. It looks like he's using a little black epoxy to fill some knot holes. He made me sand the top, which was a little payback for all the times that I've had him sand. And then it was time to template out the top to fit against the back wall. Now, this is the one area that I did help Craig a little bit. I explained how what I like to do is I like to make a plywood template because it's a lot easier than hauling the entire top up there. So he just used some thin 1/4-inch plywood. He hooked some pieces together, stuck it against the back wall. He used a spacer block and a pencil to scribe a nice line, and then he cut to that line just with a Rotex sander because, well, it's a lot easier to get an accurate cut than with a jigsaw. Then with some double-sided tape, he stuck that template on the back of that oak top, and then he used a flush trim router bit to cut right to the edge of that template. Once he had that scribe line all cut perfectly, he removed his plywood template like that. Don't need it anymore. And then I'm guessing what he's doing here is adding just a little bit of a round over to that front edge. After cutting his scribe line, he cuts the entire thing to the correct length with the track saw. And then I'm not sure what he is doing now. Looks like he's drawn some sort of line on the outer corners and cutting away some material. And now he's got a chamfer bit. Okay, so he is adding a chamfer to the back underside of the oak top. This is actually really smart. It removes a little bit of material so that there's less surface area to come in contact with the wall. And this can just really ensure that you get a tight fit against the wall. And I'm guessing he removed that material on either side just to help him get the top in place. And then that will be covered up by his upper shelves. Obviously, he's wiping the entire thing down with some Rubio Monocoat Cotton White, one of my favorites. And then he enlisted my help again to haul the entire oak top up the ladder and through the open window. I'm here for you, buddy, even at my own peril. I'm just kidding. It wasn't too bad. I pushed, he pulled, and pretty soon we had that oak top through the window, and it was time to try and wiggle it into place. Now, he didn't do a test fit before he put finish on this, so this is kind of the moment of truth on whether or not it is going to fit. Now, I explained when you're trying to get a top in between two walls, it helps to put a board in the middle. This kind of makes the top bow a little bit and helps you cinch it in there. I gotta say, Craig nailed the fit on this top. I mean, look how tight that is against the back wall. It was perfect. He added a few screws from the bottom through the plywood to lock it in place, and now it was time for him to start figuring out his upper shelf situation. Now, with the slanted roof, obviously these shelves are going to have to be built at an angle. So he got all of his measurements, and then it was back over to my shop to start cutting more pieces of 3/4-inch birch ply. Now, I'm not exactly sure what his plan is here, but I'm sure he has one. Looks like he's cutting some pieces at a 45, took them back over to the space to kind of see how they fit. He's shooting them with his finger, looks like. All right, right here is where Craig is going to make a very big mistake. It looks like he's going to glue a piece of 1/4-inch MDF over that plywood. Now, I know why he's doing this, because MDF is going to paint better than that plywood, and you're going to see it. But you'll see here in a little bit why that was a big mistake. But we'll get to that in a second. With all of his pieces cut, it appears that he's using the lamello to hook everything together. I'm not sure why. To be honest, you could totally just glue and screw all of these pieces together. It would be much, much quicker than trying to get all those lamellos lined up. But it appears that he's got them hooked together. Now he's trying to figure out where his shelves are going to land. So he's kind of marking where he wants his shelves to be on all of his pieces. And now he is gluing and screwing some shelves in. Again, if he's going to glue and screw his shelves in, why he didn't just glue and screw everything else together, I'm not sure. Oh, it looks like he's only gluing and screwing on one side. And then he's going to use the lamello to hook the shelves in on the other side. I probably wouldn't use the lamello. Lamello clips aren't really rated for downward force like that, but I'm sure it'll be all right. Oh boy, what's happened here? Oh, nice. Domino joiner right into my brand new outfeed table. Thanks. I'm also very confused because at what point was he using the domino joiner? He's been using lamellos for all of this, so maybe he just pulled out the domino joiner to drill a hole in the work table just to get back at me? I don't know. Now here's where gluing that 1/4-inch MDF on the outside was a big mistake. Not that he put the MDF on there, but that he did that first. Because I think the reason he's using lamellos to hook the shelves in on that left side is because he didn't want to create screw holes on the outside of his piece. Where if he would have just glued and screwed all the shelves in, he could have put that MDF piece on after the fact, covered up all of his screw holes, and it would have saved him so much time. Now he is having to glue and screw, I think, this top corner piece. So he glued on a caul, it looks like, so he could get some clamps on there. Yep. Added some glue to that seam, clamped it down. Nothing wrong with that, but again, I think you just should have done this for all of the joinery. He pre-drilled some pilot holes, added some screws. That thing should be locked together very nicely now. And he's still fiddling around with these shelves and lamellos at this point. Again, a couple of screws, a line of glue, and these things would have been installed a week ago. And then you glue on that MDF panel on the outside. But again, hey, as long as he gets it done in the end, that's fine. There's more than one road that leads to the ocean. That was a weird thing to say. See, he's screwing and gluing from that side. Could have done that from the other side too, but I digress. The important part is it looks like he's managed to get all of his shelves installed, and they look great. Had some nice cauls on the outside to keep everything clamped up real well. So what is next? With his 2 shelving unit carcasses complete, I think he's going to start working on the face frame. So it's back over to the table saw to cut down some more poplar. He's milling this down a little bit on the planer, making sure it's the right thickness. Cutting some pieces at angles over on the chop saw. And then, I see what he did there. So the shelf face frame's actually going to sit in, and then there's going to be an outer face frame on the outside. I actually really like that look. It gives the shelves a nice depth. You know, it doesn't get lost in the face frame, which is cool. So he gets those pieces in there with some clamps, and then, oh, okay, then he nails them on also. I feel like the glue probably would have been plenty. Don't really need the nails if you're going to put clamps on there, but that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. It's a paint grade piece, so we can always fill those nail holes and sand them down later. With all of the shelves faced now, I'm guessing he's going to, oh, I was going to say the rest of the face frame, but that's not what he's going to do. He is going to, he's going to start working on the back panels for the shelving units. So this is really smart. He lays it down on a sheet of plywood and traces out the exact shape. Pretty easy way to figure out exactly the size that you need. And then, yep, just uses the track saw to cut out that shape. Nothing wrong with that. Zip, zap, zoop. And just like that, he's got the exact shape that he needs for the back of his shelving units. Looks like he just went ahead and used 3/4 inch ply for the back, which is totally fine. You could have used 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch, but 3/4 inch will definitely make it nice and sturdy. Then he screwed those on, and I gotta say, they're looking pretty good. I mean, so far, sure, he could have done things a little bit different, like this MDF panel that isn't even covering up that 3/4 inch back panel now. Another reason that I probably would have waited to put that on until the very end, but that's just me. And then he enlisted my help to carry the shelves through a flippin' blizzard over to his house. And this is another one of those moment of truth situations, hoping everything fits correctly. Put that first piece up, slid it into place. So far, everything's looking really nice. Now, you'll notice he hasn't put on the actual face frame on the front of these cabinets yet, which is great. Much smarter to do it after you get the pieces in place, and then you can cut the face frame to fit perfectly. So he just starts piecing it together with strips of poplar, making sure he's got those outside stiles all secure and cut correctly, and then he's going to start working on that kind of angled rail piece at the top. He's using his son as a foreman to help get the measurements correct. And then let's see how he gets this piece to fit. Looks like he's got the angles all figured out. Yeah, looks like it's going to fit very nicely. So I assume now that he's got all these pieces cut to the right length, he'll go back over to the shop and hook them together with pocket. Holy cow. All right. Dominoes. Interesting choice. Again, not quite sure why he didn't just use pocket holes like he did for every other face frame so far. I honestly think Craig just gets bored sometimes, maybe, and he wants to challenge himself by making it a little harder than it needs to be. So dominoes were the obvious choice to do that, because now you gotta glue the pieces together, which means you gotta get clamps on there, but they're at angles, so that's awkward. Where with pocket holes, you just could have screwed them together. Then with his face frames done, he goes back over to those shelving pieces. With them in place, he uses some thickened epoxy to glue them onto the front of the cabinet carcasses. And then it looks like he's overhanging that front face frame a set amount. That's what he's using that little spacer block for, because I'm guessing he's going to put some strips on the sides of those cabinets to kind of give it a cased look, and also hopefully cover up that exposed plywood on the back side, which is exactly what he's doing here. Those are just thin 1/4 inch pieces, I believe. Puts one on the top and bottom. I probably would have used a 23 gauge pin nailer to hook those in place instead of a 16 gauge brad nailer, because those are much bigger holes that you're gonna have to fill and cover up before paint, but that's okay. It'll hook them on there just fine. And then yes, he did put a piece along the back to cover up that exposed plywood. Now, I probably would have cut that front piece a little thinner because you have the thickness of your face frame plus that strip. So now it doesn't match that back strip, but that's okay. Back over to the shop, filling all those 16 gauge holes, sanding everything down real nice, and spraying them with paint. Now, I'm not going to comment on his painting technique here because I'm definitely not a painter. In my book, as long as it turns out the right color, you did a fantastic job. So it looks like Craig is doing it to it. No problem there. This is actually really good to see because in the future, when we need things painted, I know that Craig is very capable now. Pretty soon he had all those upper shelves painted that nice dusty brown color. Had me come over to help him carry them across the field. They look pretty nice. And then I got kind of tired, so I tapped out and Craig's wife had to lift him into place. I mean, I can't do all the work for the guy. You've got to make it a family affair. And his wife was very willing to, oh boy, keep it PG, guys. Ugh. But man, I gotta say, those look really good. He nailed that angle, everything. He screwed them into some studs to hold them firmly in place, and then he did add some pocket holes on the front of that face frame so it was easy to attach into his oak top. And look at that. You gotta hand it to the guy. I mean, he had a vision, he executed it. Sure, there were a few things he could have done different, but I mean, it looks pretty darn good. And it only took him like 3.5 months, which really only happened because he was having to work around me the entire time.
Oh, well, you really got to hand it to Craig. I mean, this space is completely transformed. It looks absolutely gorgeous. Were there some things that he could have done different? Sure. Can you tell in the end results? No, not really. I mean, these shelves he probably could have screwed together and built in 5 minutes rather than 3 days, but hey, he got there in the end and they look great. Hopefully you enjoyed that video. Check out the links in the video description. There's a link to the Bourbon blade, which is in stock right now. So if you order it, it's going to ship practically immediately. There's a link to our Patreon where we put up a bunch of behind the scenes content. Craig did behind the scenes content on this entire build, and he's actually asking the patrons for help because he wasn't allowed to ask me. So you might want to check that out. There's also links to a bunch of, products and helpful resources down there. So, just wander down there and take a look. Craig's actually on vacation right now, and it's pretty loud at my house, so I got no place to be. I'm just gonna curl up here and take a little nappy nap. Oh yeah, this is nice.